Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the good, bad, and ugly of our everyday customer experiences. I'm Brendan Polk, Director of Marketing. With me as always is Mike Doloff, our Chief Revenue Officer. If you haven't been keeping up in this series, we're sharing our personal experiences as customers and what we can learn from it in our day-to-day lives. We've covered a few bad and ugly examples lately. Today we have another bad example to share about a cell phone provider. I'll let Mike take it away.
Yeah, you probably already have a shiver down your spine by saying the word cell phone provider. I think a lot of people have, frankly, not had great experiences, but I'm going to share my bad experience. The reality is I was with a cell phone provider for like 12 years. My wife and I got married, got the cell phone provider, moved to a whole bunch of different homes and cities, and then we moved to where we currently live in Portland, Oregon, and the provider didn't have good coverage where we're at, just not a cell tower. We've got lots of trees, which is a great thing, but unfortunately blocked the cell signal. So we tried it for a couple of years, limping along, got a repeater from them, tried that out. That didn't help, so we shipped that back and decided this isn't going to work. Let's find who do our neighbors have? Let's find somebody that's got good coverage here, and decided to make that swap. So canceled our service. Of course, they try to talk you out of it. Don't have any issues with that. That's fine. But then after we were all paid and done with wrapping up our prior cell provider and had moved to our new one, a couple months later, I got a bill in the mail for $150 for this repeater. And I was like, I had sent that repeater back a couple of years ago. What's the deal? So basically tried to find some way to get in touch with them, had to call in, had to talk with them. They had no notes. They had we didn't receive that before, which I had certainly sent in, had confirmed they'd received it previously. And so my path of least resistance was just, I'm not going to fight this anymore because I've already spent 45 minutes on the phone, and my time's more valuable than haggling and getting more frustrated. I'm just gonna pay these guys and be done with it. And it left it with a pretty sour taste in my mouth, as I've been a great paying customer for so long. So 12 years, that last interaction's poor. I will never go back to that cell phone provider because I felt like they screwed me over, frankly, at the end. It was a bad experience. So in setting aside now through time the emotional aspects of that, of just feeling frustrated, like you're dealt with unjustly. Setting that aside, let's break down these pieces of what made that a bad experience. What can we learn from that around customer experience and customer interaction? So the first point here, I think you got to think about the lack of channels. So this is a key element in so many bad experiences and so many good ones. I was moved on. I had paid my dues, done everything I thought with this provider, and now I got this bill in the mail. Okay, that's annoying. What's this for? What's this about? And it's like, how do I get in touch with these guys? The only way I could do it easily was through the phone. You know what? I didn't want to call them because I'd moved on. I'd paid them all my money as far as I had felt, and now I got to go back and this is for me a much easier scenario to send an email in, to do a chat. It's something that's less putting the burden on me. But again, I had to jump on the phone. That's annoying to me. That started immediately puts, give me an option. Give your customer options. The other reason why I actually don't prefer voice working with that particular cell phone provider is because many other times I had to call to make a change because they wouldn't do it through any other medium. And then they would promise me something, a price change, a this change, a credit on that, whatever. None of that's a big deal. But then there'd be no records and notes of that. And again, that's why I didn't actually prefer a phone call with them. I'd rather have something documented where they said, oh, this is what it was, because that had gotten me in hot water with these guys before. So lots of reasons why I didn't want that channel, and not giving me other channels is a frustrating thing. So common challenge, but one of those things, give people choices. The second part, notes and customer history are important to the interaction. So I call in, I finally get people, all these things I talked about, like I talked about the repeater in the past, again, having to call in, talked about returning it, what address, where to ship it, how to do all that, had shipped it in. All of those things had been done. None of that apparently exists. I've been a customer for 12 years. I don't think they even have an account record for me except probably billing stuff. No notes, no anything. So I call in, and I'm starting from scratch to explain the scenario. Calling to say I canceled service a couple months ago. I wasn't unhappy or anything, but we're in an area. None of that detail exists. So it's like all my previous interaction doesn't exist. That's poor form. That's poor form in this day and age. You can't do that. I was telling you the story to a friend yesterday over coffee, and she told me, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about my cell phone provider story. And I sort of like, okay, this is going to be bad. And she said, it was great. She said, I called him this morning at 7 a.m. and I needed to work through this data transfer issue. And I called in and they greeted me by name. They said, oh, hey, you're working with Charlie. Charlie's actually out on paternity leave. He told you that he was having a baby. And so he's had a baby. Everybody's happy and healthy. How's your family doing? I see that you're working on this for some of your kids, et cetera, et cetera. Very personalized, all the details of what she'd worked on and talked about with Charlie, this prior agent, a couple weeks ago, all carried forward. And she was like, this was amazing. It was really good. It made me feel really good that I was valued and appreciated. This is just a normal consumer of this cell provider service. Stark contrast to mine. So again, she's sitting out there evangelizing that story about how great it was. I'm sitting here telling you, man, the provider I worked with really didn't do a good job. No notes, no history, no nothing. So that's the second point. The third point, empower your employees to do something. I didn't go into this part of the story, but as I'm talking with a person saying, hey, look, I've been a customer for 12 years. I returned everything. You guys can say you don't see it in your system, but I've paid you guys thousands and thousands of dollars, paid on time. You can see all my billing history. Why would I lie about this? Why would I spend my time calling to do it, except that I feel like it says that you guys are wrong. That's why I'm calling. I understand. I know you're frustrated, all the empathy stuff. That's great and fine. But if you don't empower your employees to make decisions that can make sense, I wasn't going to go through 10 more hoops or try to escalate this up to some point to somebody where they can make that decision. If you're not empowering your employees, frontline, retail, restaurant, wherever you are, to try to resolve common customer experience friction, diminish those issues, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Yes, a lot of this needs to be systematized and processed, but if you're not creating a culture where people can feel empowered to do things, to make things right, then you're gonna end up with situations like this. That's the bottom line. So that's a huge, huge miss for this particular provider. It's a huge thing we have to think about. Are you empowering your employees with the level that's appropriate to be able to get creative, do things? And I think there's lots of examples that I know in the world, airlines, other providers that specifically empower people to do things. And it's part of it, part of the job, part of the culture, and certainly reflects on how their customer experiences are. The last one, to think about the bonus on this, think about the broad impacts of a negative interaction. I hammer this point home often because here I did some quick math. I'd probably paid somewhere like $12,000 to $14,000 to this company over 12 years or whatever, right? Like a decent chunk of money. And that's just a guesstimate. And over this $150 thing, which I did return, completely sour. And it's not the only thing. There are other challenges and stuff. But this, like, what's the impact of that, right? Like, I, of course, will never spend another dollar with them. I, of course, will say, don't work with them. They're not a good company. They didn't do right by me, even though I was a really long-term customer. What's the impact of that? What's the impact of that from me with not future revenues? Because we certainly would have considered going back to them. We moved location, they had a different provider or whatever. Because overall, it was a fairly decent experience. And we know that I don't expect perfection from any company or service I work for. But there's that, and then there's that broader impact of what me talking about this, what your customers sharing those experiences are like. That's lost. And that's lost because of a $150 equipment return that they hadn't checked in their system. That's craziness. Think about the impact of that to companies' bottom line. So thinking about those customer interactions and what's that, throwing that rock in the pond and the ripples of that can be really massive. And so that lifetime value of a customer diminished greatly. The lifetime value of other customers that are going to be touched by that ripple of negativity, gone, zero. Those are big things to think about. So consider the broader impacts of a negative interaction as you're looking through friction points, as you're looking at the macro and the micro of your customer journey. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Love to hear, like, comment, share stories that we can highlight here as well. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.